Time having arrived, I declare the meeting of the City Council's Finance Committee to order. Clerk.
The City of Brockton is requiring the laying out and acceptance of Aspen Street, Rodwell Street, and Victory Street as a public street or way. Invited Pat Hill, DPW Commissioner.
Good evening, councilors. Good evening. Read the.
Sorry about that. This is a public hearing, so this time I declare the public hearing open. Mr. Commissioner.
I speak first?
Yep, sorry about that.
Follow bunch. Yeah, we don't have any issue with accepting the street. It's been one of many streets that you guys will be seeing, I would imagine, in the next up and coming months. So.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor? All right, I declare that portion of the hearing closed. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I declare that portion of the hearing closed. Councilors, I like to think that I've maintained a pretty good track record of not editorializing or opining from the rostrum. But I would just like to say on this matter that I did file this. It is a priority issue up in my area. These people live on the same, streets as everybody else. They're paying the same taxes, fees, and bills, but their road is private. It's not eligible to be paved, and so this is just a matter of putting them on the same equal playing field as the rest of us. Thank you, councilors.
Move to recommend favorably.
Second.
Motion's been properly made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes.
Appointment of City of Brockton retired police officer Andrew Cesarini of Brockton, Mass. as a special police officer. Invited Andrew Cesarini.
Yep. Told you we'd be quick. Good evening.
Good evening.
Do you have anything you'd like to say to the councilors, or?
I just want to thank you for inviting me tonight, and I look forward to serving the city of Brockton as well.
Motion to recommend favorably back to the full city council.
Second.
Motion's been properly made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, councilors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ordered that the City Council authorizes the acceptance and expenditure of the total grant funds in the amount of $226,000 from Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development Mass Works Grant to Department of Planning and Economic Development Mass Works Grant Fund. These grant funds will be used to improve circulation in downtown Brockton. Invited Rob May, Director of Planning and Economic Development, and Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Mr. Clarkson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. Mr. May is out of the city at a planning conference. I'm happy to represent him and the city at this, as he had noted to you in his email and with the information that was included in your packet. This grant award would accept the Mass Works grant to allow the planning department, in conjunction with the Department of Public Works, to prepare construction drawings for the reconstruction of Franklin Street with new municipal utilities, sidewalk, and streetscape.
Councilor Farwell.
Mr. Chairman, we received extensive information on this. This will be an important part of downtown development. I know it will benefit, and I'm sure Councilor Thompson and my colleague, Councilor Tavares, agree. So I'm going to move favorable recommendation, even though I don't know Mr. May is out of the city.
I'll second that.
Motion's been properly made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes.
Ordered that the City Council authorizes the acceptance and expenditure of the total grant funds in the amount of $250,000 from Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development Fiscal Year 22 Mass Housing Choice Grant to Department of Planning and Economic Development Fiscal Year 22 Mass Housing Choice Grant Fund. These grant funds will be used for infrastructure and roadway improvements on Thatcher Street. Invited Rob May, Director of Planning and Economic Development, and Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Mr. Clarkson.
Chairman, this is also, as noted in your packet and in my email sent to you over the weekend, a grant from the Commonwealth. In this instance, it's a Mass Housing Choice Grant. I'm reading from Mr. May's email. to make public infrastructure improvements that will support the proposed redevelopment of the convent on Thatcher Street. The DPW will oversee the actual work, while the planning department will manage the grant and coordinate between the property owner, developer, and the Department of Public Works.
Motion to recommend favorably back to the full city council.
Second.
Motion's been properly made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Resolve, whereas a downtown urban renewal plan was adopted by the City Council in 2016, and whereas the plan included specific initiatives to be undertaken and a projected budget required for the success of the plan, and whereas there are amendments to the plan, and those changes are now part of the goals and objectives for redevelopment in the center of the city, and whereas it is important to have periodic reviews of the progress, planning, and implementation of the urban renewal plan. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Executive Director of the Brockton Redevelopment Authority and the Chair of the Redevelopment Authority Board appear before a committee of the Brockton City Council to discuss progress on the original urban renewal plan and the modifications adopted as part of the continuing city initiatives. Invited Robert Jenkins, Executive Director, BRA, Philip Griffin, Chairman, and Rob May, Director of Planning and Economic Development.
Chairman, Director.
Good evening, Mr. President, councilors. Thank you very much for having us in tonight, and thank you, Councilor Farwell, for the formal invitation. We wanted to give you, councilors, an update on what's going on with the plan for the downtown urban renewal. As you can see, just driving around, there's a lot of construction going on, and there's more that's slated. Both Robert and Patricia tonight have a very nice and thorough presentation, give you an idea of some of the projects that we've completed, some that are in the process of being completed, and some that are in the pipeline. I'm going to turn it over to them and let them give their presentation. If you have any questions after, I'll be glad to answer them for you. Again, thank you very much for having us in tonight. Robert.
Good evening, councilors. Once again, thank you for the invitation. We do have a PowerPoint presentation that hopefully the monitors are working. They are not. Well,
They aren't.
plugged in, Pat. Are we plugged in?
Okay.
As she figuring that out, let me just give you a narrative on one of the things we passed in 2016, or you passed in 2016, was the Downtown Urban Revitalization Plan. We are supposed to come here on request, or at least to give an update on the progress and the developments that are going on. As the chairman has alluded to, there are several updates that are going on. We have a PowerPoint once we get that up, but let me talk about some of the things that you know. We've held 3 public hearings so far with the Citizens Advisory Committee. Some of you have even attended those meetings. This is just to bring you up to speed, because in 2 weeks, we also are hopefully that Councilor Thompson actually presents an order. This body has to have a public hearing on any amendments that we provide to the state and to the city as far as the urban revitalization efforts. So in 2 weeks, hopefully with an order from the counselor, we'll be coming before you to give a more specific amendment, listing all the amendments that are changes that we're doing to the downtown revitalization plan, which includes properties that we didn't identify in 2016, but we now have identified some 6 years later. Are we working yet? No. So I can tell you, as you go downtown, some of the properties you'll take a look at, one of the first properties, as you guys know, is 121 Main Street, which is where the Brockton Beer is also located, headquarters, 48 units that are now completed. It's also where Brockton Beer is looking to establish their headquarters. We're also looking at, from the PowerPoint, you good, Pat?
Mr. Jenkins, sorry.
Councilor Thompson.
Yeah, it could be helpful. Could you explain what the urban renewal district is and how that benefits the city and?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let me give you a description. Most of you may know, but just downtown, the boundaries of the urban revitalization district goes from Pleasant Street to West Elm, part of Crescent Street to Commercial, all the way to Warren Avenue. In that particular area, we've filed, or you filed, or approved an urban revitalization plan
to increase the density in housing, to offer special programs like the 40R. There's also the zoning, also density, 40R, but there's also, I forget what it's called, the IRS zoning. It eludes me, special tax purposes that was passed under the Trump administration. We've identified 2 of those zones.
Opportunity zone.
Thank you, Counselor. Opportunity zones, 2 of those are in the downtown district, which we have developers taking advantage of as well. One of the first in the state was actually 47 West Elm Street. As you know, that was Mr. Anatol's development of 38 units. We're also looking at Mr. Carmen's development, which we'll show on the PowerPoint once it comes up, which is 93 Center Street, which is under construction. As most of you know, we took the BRA took that by eminent domain. It's 53 units of market rate and workforce housing. Those are the 2 that I know that are opportunity zones. What this does for the city, though, we're going through what I call a renaissance, where we have a lot of interest in development because we have this plan for downtown to increase the density in housing, but also commercial development. So we have this incentive, and we've been approached by several developers. We're working also with the state. Mass Development has invested probably close to $20 million into downtown, just on studies and also direct financing of developments. We're good, Pat? Maybe? Not yet.
So, Mr. Jenkins, within this district, when you identify a property, what does that mean, and what tools are available for development purposes when you identify a property for development?
In most cases, what this body does, we've identified property that the city actually owned and transferred to the Brockton Redevelopment Authority. 2 of those properties, or actually 5 of those properties, were on what I call Petronelli Way, Montello Street. There was also some property that we're now identified currently that's on Frederick Douglass Avenue. 2 of those properties, actually 2 of those properties was given to the BRA or transferred to the BRA for development. One you'll know, and it's also in the PowerPoint, is 111 Frederick Douglass Way, formerly High Street. That property has been identified for commercial development. The other property is the Hotel Grayson, which is an old historic building that has also been identified for housing, studio housing, as well as commercial development on the first floor. When we talk about incentives, the real incentives here are the fact that, 1, we've identified a plan, an urban revitalization plan. We have a strategy for increased density and housing, but also commercial development. The other pieces of that, the incentives, if Mr. May was here, he'll talk about his 7-layer dip, where you look at 40R, you look at the opportunity zone, you'll look at some of the incentives, the TIF, the tie agreements. Those are part of his 7-layer dip that actually what puts us in an advantage versus other gateway cities is that we do have a plan. A lot of gateway cities, just from my experience, do not have a plan. And actually, it's funny, I bring this up and I think about it. We've been contacted by several gateway cities, and how did we put together our urban revitalization plan? It's really due to our planning department. I got to give them the credit because they identified the boundaries of an area. We used to take a shotgun approach, and that would have been, in my opinion, would have been a wrong approach for the city of Brockton. It's much better if you have a concentrated approach that you can see what works in your downtown area, improving the density and allowing for the density. The key for us also is that we had a lot of vacant buildings. That was the other thing. 19 Main Street, which is also in our PowerPoint. When I first looked at that, and that was back in 2016, 2017, many of you probably weren't here, but I know Councilor Farwell was here, Councilor Rodriguez was here, Shirley was here. I walked through, and Jack was here. I walked through that building with Councilor Ann Beauregard. My first impression of that building was to tear it down because it was in such deplorable shape. I remember talking to Councilor Rodriguez. He said, just give it away, give it away. And I said, you really can't give away resources, especially land. Well, what happened is we, and most of you know, because several of you were here, we had two developers come in and talk about that. One who Mayor Rodriguez at that time wasn't very pleased with, but the building was in such deplorable condition. Former, God rest his soul, Mayor Carpenter put together a commercial line item for investment to make these properties much more marketable. We ended up repairing the roof, the wall that was falling down, we ended up invested in there, and we actually had someone who ended up buying that property from the redevelopment for like $325,000, I think, or $219. It was either $295 or $310, I don't remember. But the fact of the matter is that we made a building that initially was gonna fall down on its own, or we repaired it and then sold it to an investor who is now like 80% done with his. He thinks he's going to have that property occupied by late summer, early fall. These are the things that we've kind of, how should I say, invested in ourselves, invested in our buildings in order to make them more marketable. And today we have people and developers coming in, not so much looking for gifts, but really looking to invest in the city. And I think that was my key point when I first looked at that building, that we'd be better off tearing it down. But to some other people's wisdom, and I gotta give credit to Council Beauregard, Robert, you're not tearing down this building, to invest in it, and Mayor Carpenter giving us the wherewithal to invest in the building in order to get it on the market. So they're looking at doing 20 units in that building with 3 commercial spaces. Another property that we took the same take on was the Grayson Hotel, which is once again a historic building in deplorable condition. The fact that Neighbor Works built the building next to it, 121 Main Street, and the fact that they were very interested in the Grayson Hotel as a, how should I say, a community first floor for that building, and also the Grayson, their designs for that building, the 18 studios, are what I call probably New York, Manhattan style studios, where you have very high ceilings. I think the smallest studio is like 425 feet, but the ceilings are like 12 feet high, which is amazing. And it gives that look that we're looking for, but also the concentration. One of the amendments that we're looking at is the development of the Stottleman property, which is right adjacent to that. You guys know the Stottleman Garage, its location. That whole corner, because the city is investing $100 million across the street from Frederick Douglass, $100 million for what I call a public safety campus, because it includes the police, fire department, IT, and emergency management. People now have the perception that Brockton is moving forward. We had, and most of you who were at the public hearings have heard of this, the Day brothers came to us and proposed building a vertical garden on that corner of Warren Avenue, Frederick Douglass, and L Street. This is a private development, coinciding with looking at a public development of us building a garage and acquiring the Stottleman property, building a garage, because we do need another one. As I talked with the parking authority just last Thursday, we had that meeting, we do need another garage. We're probably gonna need a 3rd garage. But with this initial amendment, we didn't have that in 2016 and 15 or 17. We weren't looking at that. But since they came to us and they're looking at a private development just on that corner, if you know where Attorney Nacio's office is, she owns that property. The city owns the lot that's next to it and the lot that's behind it, and the Stottleman owns 3 lots also that's behind it. They're looking to do a private acquisition to ascertain those, to build the 60,000 square foot vertical garden. We in turn will look at building another garage, as well as probably 100 units of housing with commercial on the 1st floor facing Frederick Douglass and L Street. These are some of the, it's a no-go. It doesn't work. That's amazing.
The outlet
So,
doesn't work?
here's what I'm gonna do. Can I just see that and I can just walk them through? Some of these, if you went to the public hearings, you know what I'm talking about, but those of you who don't, I will send out the PowerPoint presentation. But here's the thing, this is actually a preparation for you just for those of you who weren't in 2016, who haven't attended the public hearings, so that you have an idea of what we are proposing and what we're looking to do. Excellent, thank you. I did talk about, excellent. 121 Main Street, 48 mixed units, income units with commercial Brockton beer on the first floor. 19 Main Street, most of you folks know, as I mentioned, under construction, 20 apartments, market rate apartments with 3 commercial spaces on the first floor. This one we had an LDA, land disposition agreement with, that we're really marketing for a first floor bistro in one of those locations. I have some renderings here that you can't see. I also have 93 Center Street, Ted Carmen's development, 53 market rate units, commercial space on the first floor. Small commercial space, I think, is roughly 1,500 square feet. Once again, renderings. We actually did a tour when we went to Ted Carmen's groundbreaking at 28 Petronelli. We went and did a tour of that, of 93 Center Street. It's really coming along fantastically. It's really going to be a beautiful building. Right now, I think it is the tallest residential building or the tallest building downtown. Grayson Hotel, which I mentioned, 18 studio units. The design of these units, I think, is really, how should I say, I don't want to say magnificent, but for those of you who've been down Manhattan, and I have a niece who lives in one of these studios, pays outrageous money, she would probably die over a unit that looks like this. That's the interior studio, that it could have actually a loft design because the ceilings are so high in this facility, in this building. The rendering, 28 Petronelli. For those of us who attended the groundbreaking for Petronelli, under construction, 18 market rate apartments. Once again, the way they designed these apartments are really, I should say, fantastic, beautiful. High ceilings, lofty, very nice market rate units. And once again, one of the other incentives here, it's a stone throw from the commuter rail, Brockton commuter rail. Trinity Phase 2, which is now under construction, 109 units. They're approximately probably 50%, a little over 55% completed. We're working with them, as you know, there's a new road going into Petronelli, as well as what I call, and this is also you'll see in your amendment for I-3, what I call I-3, off of Petronelli, and I-4, which is off of Franklin Street. I know that the planning department is also working on redoing or designing Franklin Street because the way we've accessed, opened up other lots, there are going to be developments that are off of Franklin and possibly Court as well. 111-15 Frederick Douglass, formerly High Street. We have an exclusive negotiating agreement with Innovative Community Development Corporation. It's an LLC, organically grown. What I mean by that, she's from Brockton, Black woman from Brockton, who's doing development, who's gonna do 100% commercial. Her rehab office, commercial retail, looks to do a small market on that street. Probably makes a lot of sense with the density. The fact now is you know it as a purple building. Here again, we took advantage of a building. In my old days, I said tear it down because it was in such deplorable condition. And you really didn't have a lot of takers until we replaced, we actually replaced the intake water main backflow for this building. We have to replace the roof on this building. There were some structural issues. And there was a third thing. We did selective demolition in this building as well. There was a lot of temporary walls and it was just cut up just really badly. But once you opened it up, you really had a gem of a building. I talked about the Frederick Douglass Avenue, L Street, Warren Avenue. Just back up. Once again, these properties that are on, and this is part of our amendment as well, and you'll get into more details. And at the end of this presentation, we actually have handouts of the amendment with the executive summary in this, which gives us some time to talk about the amendments that are coming before you for your approval. One of the things in there is what I call the L Street, Frederick Douglass, Warren Avenue development in our agricultural garden. The other piece that's in here as well that I'll point out is we're looking also to do some development. We've identified acquisitions for sites that's on Legion Parkway. You know where Brass's gas station is in that whole corner? We've identified that. We've been in conversations with the owner who owned well, I can't say everyone. I knew Legion Parkway Pizza because whenever I needed lunch, I would go there. Well, since the pandemic, they've been closed. They're not opening up. The gentleman lives in Cambridge who owns the property. It's not on the top of his list. And for us, it needs to be on the top of his list. So we have identified that as acquisition, one way or the other, to get that in order to make something happen. Legion Parkway for downtown, that is our business component. That's our business district. You have the Neighborhood Health Center at one end, Harbor One in the middle, and then you also have in Firestone, as much as I probably don't like it in this location, it's busy. And you get a lot of people, and you have a lot of commercial retail on Legion Parkway. So we feel we can't have these vacant buildings that are just sitting there, not doing anything. And I know I've talked to David Brass, and he's contacted me a couple of times saying, Robert, when are you gonna buy this? I said, David, we have to go through a process. We just can't buy it. But I know he has talked to me about what are we gonna do with that whole corner there, where his gas station is, and coming around the Legion Parkway all the way to that lot that's owned by, I forget the guy's name, I only know him by Sammy, who lives in Cambridge. In your PowerPoint that I'm gonna send you, we list all of the units that have been developed or under construction. There are approximately 467 units, housing units, market rate, affordable units that are under construction that will probably be completed in the next, I would say 9 to 12 months. And then we also have, excuse me, we also have the units that are in the pipeline, approximately 434 units that have been identified that's in the pipeline. What those units are waiting for is for approval. We have to go through a process because initially they weren't identified. Some of them were, but most of them weren't not identified in 2016. Excellent. So here's where we're at as far as critical path. The BRA Citizens Advisory Committee held their last public hearing on Friday, April 15th. The BRA board had a special meeting to approve the amendment on April 20th. We have a presentation that I'm doing today, just an update and progress report to the City Council, just on the urban revitalization and update, progress report. The Planning Department is looking to hold a special meeting either on May 10th or 17th. I have to check with Rob's office just to see has it been scheduled. And then in 2 weeks, the City Council hopefully will have a public hearing. It's required by law. The City Council have a public hearing on the amendment itself prior to approval. And then we have to submit it to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, who has 30 days to approve it, as well as Mass Department of Environmental Protection. They both get it at the same time. They have 30 days to approve it. It's very important that we have questions, and this is why I wanted to come today, just to kind of prep you, because I felt coming on the 16th is, while some of you have attended, and I know I talk to Councilor Farwell often, I talk to Councilor Rodriguez, Councilor Thompson, even Shirley, I talk to all the time. Sue gives me a call from now and then, and even Rita. But I really needed everybody to be on the same page. So this gives us an opportunity to talk about the amendment, to talk about specific sites, most of which are in Ward 5 and Ward 2, Maria. So it gives us time to talk about these developments. What's their financing? How do we know they're gonna do it? What's their time frame? And what's our process? You've heard me use the term LDA, it's Land Disposition Agreement. Anything that has to do with the city's property, whether they transfer it to the BRA or not, the state requires that there's a land disposition agreement. Know how much they're paying for it, what they're putting on it, and the time frame. Time frame is very critical to us because we just don't want to hand over property and it sits for another 2 or 3 years. This is a 20-year plan. We're already into year 6, 2016, 6 years later, 400. Our goal when we first did this was to do 1,000 units in 20 years. Well, we're halfway there and we're not halfway. It's not even year 10 yet. So with that said, I'll entertain any questions. As I said, we do have handouts for the amendment itself in 2 weeks. If any of you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call. I know most of you do, but don't hesitate to give me a call, all right? And I apologize for the PowerPoint because we came here earlier today with...
I was really looking forward to that.
And I came here early today with Clerk Cruz, and we set it up, it works. But as I told him, Murphy's Law, if something can go wrong, it will, so I apologize.
Would it be possible I know you said you'd send this to the counselors, but would it be possible for you to put this up online as well for the folks at home?
Absolutely. We'll put it on our website tonight, okay?
Perfect, yeah. Counselor Azak, followed by Counselor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Jenkins, and thank you, Chairman Griffin, for being here, as well as Pat. So I had the honor of attending your annual meeting and actually seeing this beautiful PowerPoint. So I hope at some point, the councils will get a chance to see it. I have to tell you, I was very excited, and it's really, it's wonderful to see things actually happening in downtown. This has been years in planning, and a lot of your vision becoming.
It's your vision. It's really the leadership of the city.
Which is, well, I think it's a collaboration. I think it's really great, and I want to thank the investors that have actually invested in the city of Brockton. I know a lot of times when we look at some of these buildings, we're like, oh my God, but what they've done, I'll take 47 West Elm Street. Who would have thought that, we had a burnt down building for so many years, so awful to look at, yet now when we drive by, it's really, this could be in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and it's in Brockton, and Brockton's beautiful, so I want to thank you for all your hard work, and always keeping the lines of, communication open with us. I know that you've really shared a lot of information throughout the years with us when you've had developers come in, you've met with us, and from my end, it's really nice to actually see this actually happening. So it's actually really nice, and thank you to your board there. You have a really good board, strong board, and it shows. Thank you. So thank you. Thank you, Pat. I know I was very impressed. I was very impressed at the meeting with, your team and your leadership. So thank you.
Thank you, Council.
All set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, good evening, Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Griffin, and Patricia. I'm not sure your last name. Jackson. Good evening. So thanks for coming before us to, really make a presentation on the downtown urban renewal plan in the district. A lot of great things are happening in our downtown area. We all know what's currently being built there. We see the cranes, we see the buildings being completed right now, but there are so many more in the pipeline. And, we're going to have multiple cranes swinging in the city very soon. Just 26 School Street, that is the building that was just demolished right across the street from here. We're speaking with a developer right now who purchased that property, who's looking to put, is it market rate in that?
Market rate, from my understanding, he's looking at 55 market rate units with commercial.
Right, well, I don't know if there was there a commercial proponent? I thought he was putting parking underneath, or?
I thought there was a commercial component, but once again, that's a private development.
Right.
And usually private developers want to do their own thing, so they don't engage the redevelopment authority until they have a plan approved by the planning department.
I know we did sit down with them and went over some initial planning, some renderings. What they're planning on doing on this property is going to be beautiful, so looking forward to that. The Marion Brothers, they're in talks to sell their building, have it completely demolished with a new building that would expand into that, 2 years ago, that Prava, where it was in that empty lot there. So we'd be looking at a brand new building. Was that market rate as well, or?
Market rate as well, he's looking at 40R, a minimum of 20% affordable. We are in discussions with him because he's also looking to probably apply to the city or the state for the affordable unit. But his initial was 100, just straight market rate. But once again, I should have mentioned that. That's the Marion properties for you folks who know. Marion Tuxedos, his building, and then the vacant lot that's next door. And
So,
just as you pointed out, he does have a design for it's more like a parklet that's next to the building where we had Prova, where 121 Main. There's city-owned property that's there, and part of that, he's looking along with the planning department to do a parklet.
right there. Great location for that, and another building that's, it'll be brand new construction. So that will be a beautiful addition to our downtown. Additionally, across the street, the Kennedy Building, I believe that's what we call it, with the scaffolding where Elvira's is on the bottom floor. There's expectation of using the Mass Historic credits to revitalize that building. So that's going to be another great development. Elm Court, right there on West Elm Street, is another development in the pipeline. The I-3 property, Joe Concalvo's new building, where it's going to front Marvelous Marvin Hagler Drive and Marvelous Marvin Hagler Park, which will be a little bit further down. The garage at Stadler that you mentioned, the demolition and construction of a new garage at the Stadler building. I don't know if anybody's seen the rendering. The gentleman who is looking to actually acquire this building and build the vertical farm, also with apartments above this garage. It's one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen. He's already done this building in Maine, I believe, and he's looking to reproduce something similar here in Brockton. Can't wait. Hopefully you can have that for the public hearing?
In the PowerPoint.
Okay, perfect.
But once again, we also met with the Lieutenant Governor, the mayor and I, Rob May, Chief of Staff, and Troy Clarkson met with the Lieutenant Governor, and they were really excited about this because this is something that Brockton is the first, but it can be duplicated in other gateway cities.
So we're really looking forward, and I recommend everybody take a look at these renderings. You'll be amazed at what they look like. Joffrey Anatoli has another building right there, the old D'Angelo's on Montello Street. I've seen the renderings of that building. It looks beautiful. Looking forward to that. You did mention briefly, and I know we'll talk more about it at the public hearing next week, but the requirement for more garages downtown. Now, we're all really happy about the 40R buildings and what we all call transit-orientated development here in Brockton. And there's some, expectation that this new development would not use cars, right? They'd all be using the MBTA to travel into Boston or to other destinations. Now, that's definitely great as a theory, but I think we all know that most people, if you're living in Brockton, you're going to need a car. And so we're going to have to provide parking for the residents who are living downtown. And since we're losing a lot of our street lots for these developments, we're going to need additional parking for those who come and visit our downtown. So a comprehensive parking plan, additional garages downtown, it's going to be a necessity. And I think we all need to further discuss how we're going to encourage additional parking garages and parking in our downtown. I think ultimately our planning is moving forward. I'm really excited about where we are and where we're going to be the next 5-10 years. Brockton is going to transform. I guarantee it. And just lastly on the URP. So from my understanding, as you previously stated, the boundaries of the district, those boundaries then encourage the 7-dip plan that Rob May has previously stated, different financing abilities for developments in these downtown, both commercial and residential. We identify these properties for development. Now, if they're city property, then, you and the BRA can acquire those properties and then seek development of the properties that the city already owns. The ones that are currently occupied by private owners, the city reaches out to them, or the BRA reaches out to them, says we've identified this property as a property that we believe what requires more development. Now, we would either encourage them and give them the know-how and the contacts for them to develop those properties themselves. If they need more assistance, we could put them in touch with an interested developer, whether that developer can come on as a partner and develop the property in partnership with the current owner, or even potentially sell to that developer who would then develop that property. And then last, and certainly least, because it's something that we do not want to do as a city, and that's if we do identify a property within the urban renewal, it is subject to a taking. So as we did with 93 Center Street, which we're all very familiar with, it does allow the city to, use eminent domain to take a property if so needed, which we cannot state enough is a last resort. And really, we have no desire to do anything like that in the future. But I just kind of wanted to give a brief description of what the URP does, and really some of the great things that are happening here in Brockton. And it's a great time to be a Brocktonian. It's a great time to be a city councilor. That can be a part of this development. And so I'm just super proud to be a part of all of this. Thank you for your leadership, both you, Phil, and you, Rob. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Thompson, for all your support also.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Farwell, followed by Counselor Minicello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Jennings and Mr. Griffin. A couple of things. Number one, this is going to be an evolving plan. I mean, we're going to have amendments periodically come in. I think that's good. I think we do have to adapt as times change. Certainly a $98 million public safety facility throws a whole new complexion on what's going on downtown, because it shows the city is willing to put its money into development as well as private developers, and I think that is reassuring to them. Added parking garages downtown, great revenue source. I would say, however, and I hope you'll push this with the mayor and Mr. May, to the extent that we're going to greatly increase the number of vehicles coming downtown and to parking garages, let's make sure that whatever traffic plan we put together for the new public safety facility reflects that, because you are going to have fire department and/or police runs coming out of that new facility, and you don't want to choke off traffic to a point where we delay response times. City-owned property, by the way, we still have to vote to transfer it to the BRA, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
So to the extent that the city owns a piece of property downtown or in another part of the city, you'd come before us, there would be a plan, and we would debate, discuss, and then vote to turn it over to the BRA. The old expression, the proof of the pudding is in the tasting, and it is going to take a while for this to happen. I'm sure some of us won't be in the council when all of this comes to fruition, but as Councilor Thompson said, it is exciting to think that we're laying the building blocks of what we hope will finally be the picture of what we want for downtown Brockton. The last couple of things, people's budgets have really been blown up with what's going on now. So I've lost track of what would be affordable housing or market rate housing or rents downtown. My concern is that, even at $1,800 or $1,600 for a studio apartment, I'm not sure there are that many people that would be able to afford that, factoring in all of the other requirements for income. So when you come in pursuant to Councilor Thompson's order, would you give us the latest on what do we project to be market rate?
Sure.
Studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. And then lastly, I am absolutely committed to having the ward councilors involved in everything that goes on. But to the extent that something comes out, a new, artist rendering of a building or a new potential developer downtown, please share it, if not with the full council, at least with the councilors at large, because Councilor Rodriguez and I and Councilor Mendez and Texera, if you're going to do zoning changes, our votes count, and people may ask us questions about things that we know nothing about. So I would just ask that the more information, the better. Everyone may not have time to read it. Everyone may not be interested in reading it, but some of us do like to keep up with whatever is changing, whatever is going on, so that if we get hit with a question at a meeting or just in a social gathering, we look somewhat up to speed on what's going on. So, but I can't thank both of you enough, and the board and your staff.
Thank you, Council.
It's, Brockton is fortunate to have you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Minichiello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Robert. I think we all know now that there's a new executive director over at Brockton Community Access, BCA. So it might be a good time to showcase what's going on downtown and to run the presentation on BCA so that the public can get a firsthand look at what the exciting things that are happening. Like Councilor Azak said, this is a really unique time with regard to a conglomeration and a coordination of private, public, and semi-public organizations, and to really show what's going on to the people of Brockton and showing the progress that's been made and the projections, and now is a good time to do that. Just a suggestion. You're doing great work, and like you said, this is a renaissance. When I ran for office, we all knew this was a huge real estate transition for the city of Brockton. The people are waking up to the fact that we're on the train, we're close to we're at a great place to Cape Cod and Providence and Boston. We've been here, but and now the train's coming in, so to speak, for all these projects, and it's exciting. But yeah, I think BCA would be a great avenue right now, and the new executive director, I'm sure, would love to, present a nice program for the citizens of Brockton to really show them what's happened and what's in the works, so.
Agreed. Thank you, Councilor. We have talked to BCA, and we've had a public
It's on
meeting.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Your annual meeting is on YouTube.
Sure, and I think one of the public meetings that was held at BCA as well, but we definitely, I know there's a new executive director, and we'll make a point, definitely, to talk with him.
He's looking for just new things like this about Brockton, in terms of showing a presentation like you have that we unfortunately can't see tonight, but that might be good for BCA, so that it share it with more people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Counselor. You all set, Counselor? Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rodriguez.
Gee, I think for a second I thought you forgot about me.
Never.
I get very upset and bothered by that. Mr. Jenkins, how are you?
I'm well, sir, and yourself?
Well, one of the good things that we heard not too long ago was that the South Coast Rail is coming down in a real future, in this sense, not just in language anymore, but the construction actually has been done, and it's going to further connect Brockton to areas now like New Bedford and Fall River, because the conversation in the past was to connect it to the Stoughton line, but now they moved it to the Brockton Middleborough line. So it will actually help us connect with the South Coast cities down there, further making our city more valuable as we move forward, because we're with the mini Boston, because at least we're a lot closer to Boston. And that leads me to my question. What prevents the city of Brockton, at least from your knowledge, what prevents the city from building vertically versus horizontally? Because it seems that a lot of the projects that come down the pipe in this city, in the downtown area, continues to resemble the small communities that we have in the South Shore. What prevents Brockton from having a high-rise, a mini high-rise? I'm not talking about Is there an ordinance restriction that you know of that prevents that?
Zoning. It's zoning first and money second.
Zoning for what? To
Zoning
keep
for
it a
height to
certain?
go above 75 feet, I think, or
65.
65 feet. So to go above that, it's a zoning, it requires a zoning change. But then you also get into the materials. Once you go above 65 or 75, you then have to switch to steel, which is much more, and wood is expensive now, but steel is even more expensive. Those are the issues. Those zoning, and then you, just like we did here, Counselor, we incentivize people to develop here. You have to come in and have incentives. For people, one, your zoning has to change, but two, how do you overcome the market and steel prices?
Well, how does Boston and some of these other communities do it?
Boy, their tax rate on commercial development is a lot more and
it was
a lot wider than ours.
If it was up to us, I guess the Freedom Tower would never come up in this community.
Well, first
because
you have to do step one. It's a process, Council, you know this. You gotta change your zoning. And then you gotta figure out what's gonna draw people, just like we did the urban revitalization, the process. Then you gotta come up with some incentives and process to make people wanna build steel construction. It's expensive. And
Is there any way at least we can, not insist, but basically recommend or push developers into building something so that it resembles a downtown location? If the current zoning is 65, at least to build up to 65, 4 or 5 stories high in the sense so that we don't have these 1 and 2 story buildings in the middle of our city.
65 feet is?
Yeah, I know.
About the size of the height of the garage.
I graduated from Brockton High.
No, just to give you a visual, it's about the height of the garage, the carpenter garage.
Jeez.
For those-
And I'm about
that's
5'10", 5'10", so I figure, a few, so. But anyways, I figure I bring that up because,
It's a good question, but this body has to deal with the first step, zoning.
yeah.
Your zoning doesn't allow for it, so. that's
I'm
the
just
first-
saying in the future, in the sense, so that we can move into, because we talk about a downtown. When I think of a downtown, I'm thinking of downtown that has nice-looking buildings that you look up to. Again, it doesn't have to be 10, 20, 30 stories high, but it should be what downtowns look like. At least that's the way I see it. But we don't have to talk about that. I just wanted to know if it was just ordinance or, because that can change. The second point that I wanted to bring up is, where is two-way traffic in the conversation when it comes to the downtown renewal? You know that's one of my little pet peeves.
I think everybody that sits on this council has heard of two-way traffic. I know my board has, we work with the planning department. It is in the works, I know, for Warren Avenue, which is a public safety facility. I know that it's more complicated than people realize because of the, what do we call it, accessory streets around them and the signal lights, and it's more expensive than, and more complicated than we like. However, I know there is a plan for part of Warren Avenue for your public safety facility and making it two-way traffic. There's still talk about Main Street and its vibe, but if you do that, then you really do have to look at Court Street, which is two-way, and then Belmont, which is a one-way once you pass Warren Avenue. There's a lot of complication to it. But the key here is, that's not my area expertise. We should talk to the planning department.
But my question was, where is it on the conversation?
On the conversation, it's,
When it comes to downtown renewal?
when it comes to downtown renewal, urban revitalization, we talk about Main Street. And it's only from Pleasant to Belmont, or not even, West Elm, Crescent Street. That's where the conversation starts and ends, because that's our boundary.
But it is in conversation, basically, that's
It's
what you're saying.
always in conversation, improving, especially if you're encouraging commercial development on the first floor. People will tell you, and most of you know this, especially from that runway from, what I call a runway, when you make the turn on Main Street from Belmont, you hit that first light. For some reason, everybody wants to make sure they hit that light that's over right across from the neighborhood health center. It has been crashed into more times than I can count, because people either don't see the light or they're trying to make that light, which is, two-way traffic. We have to do, and Councilor Farwell brought it up, we gotta talk about traffic. You gotta figure,
one thing for Counselor, for 19 Main Street, I've crossed there several times, and I encourage everyone to go to 1931 Main Street and check out New Vision's development there. But crossing that street is dangerous. I have to talk to DBW. It's dangerous because cars are trying to make that light onto Pleasant. Pleasant going to the left, Corp going to the right. People are, I don't know what it is. It's like everybody, got to make that light. And it's dangerous if you're walking, for pedestrians especially. And that's my biggest concern when we talk about traffic. We're increasing the density downtown. We want to make it more walkable. We have to slow the traffic down.
There is nothing wrong with having controlled chaotic traffic in your downtown area because it gives people.
If I buy a car, nobody wants to hear about controlled chaotic traffic.
No, because, no, you do. No, they do, because you know what? You go to Somerville, you go to Cambridge, their downtown areas, it goes light to light, not the highway that we have down here. So that's what ends up happening sometimes. That we kind of have to, you know, there's nothing wrong with traffic in your downtown because that's how your businesses survive with window shopping. You know, if you're going through a highway like we do from Belmont to Pleasant, it's a highway. You know, you try to hit the lights as quick as you possibly can. So you're not doing much shopping as far as shopping is concerned with your eyes anyway. So to keep that in mind, that there's nothing wrong with controlled, chaotic traffic.
Yeah.
You know?
Or congested traffic, as long as it's controlled, it's really,
All right,
that's kind of what you want.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, councilors. Councilor Castro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Jenkins. Good evening, Phil. I just wanted to offer a comment. Several years ago, the Urban Lands Institute came down and on a tap looking at the Christos project, but also driving all around the city. And you hosted a meeting at the BRA with them, a lunch meeting, good sandwiches. And I recall, I knew some of the people on the panel, and I recall them saying that one of Brockton's greatest challenges was we're only 25 miles from Boston, and so Boston prices are charged for materials and for construction and for, you know, the personnel, but yet we cannot get Boston prices for our rents and for our buildings. And so that's a real problem that we encounter. And I'm sure that's a factor in what you're talking about right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's funny, Council, because while we are in the early, especially in 2016, 17, pre-pandemic, that was really a strain on our development and looking at it. But as post-pandemic now and looking during the pandemic, Boston stopped construction. Mayor Sullivan continued construction here. There were two developments that I know would be way behind the 8 ball, and if he had stopped construction, 121 Main Street being the obvious one, but those folks then moved here. They weren't working in Boston, they came here and worked on 121 Main Street, and they were doing testing at that time on Trinity Phase 2. Joseph Gonzalez and getting people from the craftsmen, the contractors to come to Brockton wasn't an issue. It was because Boston had stopped work and they had to get these guys to work and they were coming here. So it helped us in that sense, but to get to your point about the pricing, it's changing, and I hope in 2 weeks when I do bring the amendment, Councilor Farwell, I will bring the pricing so that we can see what we're looking at rents, because our rents have gone up tremendously, even for studios, which it's interesting to see what Neighbor Works is charging for their studios, which are the largest studios, the largest ones I've seen anyway, versus what everyone else is charging. It's very interesting, very, very interesting paradigm. Our prices and Boston's prices, in Quincy, in Weymouth. And as you get closer to us, even in Weymouth, there's a development in Weymouth Landing that one of the developers has finished a development there. He thinks he can get the same prices here in Brockton.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilors, is there anyone who wishes to speak who has not yet spoken? Or are you all right with that? All right, Counselor Azak.
Thank you. So prices of, rental costs comes up all the time, and everybody says that they're high, but yet we have no vacancies.
I know.
That's that we have no vacancies. All these new developments, they're already rented. All our old multifamilies, they're all rented. We don't have vacancies, which is really great. So, I mean, I'm not a professional in the market as what rents should go, but knowing that there's no vacancies means that people can't afford them, and they are renting our, downtown, so that's.
Here's my thoughts. We are having a gentrification. That's what it is. And it's not the gentrification of the 60s or 70s. It's people of color who are moving from Boston, moving to Brockton. The one issue I think we have a challenge with is commercial. Our commercial rents are still what I would consider depressed compared to Weymouth, Quincy. They're still depressed. And we have a lot of commercial vacancies. So we have to incentivize that. The housing, I think, is going to take care of itself. There's so many incentives to build housing. We get that. But now we have to think of the commercial aspect. In order to have a viable, sustainable downtown, you have to have commercial development, so.
We agree. Well, I just wanted to make that comment. So with that, if there's no other questions, I'll make a motion to recommend this favorably back to the full city council.
Second.
Counselors, the motion has been properly made and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselors, any moments of personal privilege? Counselor Azak.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that Tuesday, May 17th, we will be having an ordinance meeting here in council chambers at 6 p.m. These are public hearings. They have been advertised in the newspaper. And the discussion, some of the major discussions are outdoor seating for restaurants and food trucks. So just everybody keep an eye out on those. And secondly, this Saturday, May 7th, from 9 a.m. to noon, we're having our citywide cleanup, which is Keep Brockton Beautiful Day. The registration and start of the cleanup is at Heights Crossing, 27 Christie's Place. So please contact the recycling depot at 508-580-7827 if you need more information or if you would like to pre-register. I hope we have good weather and looking forward to seeing everybody there. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other moments? Counselor Nicastro.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a new baseball league playing at the baseball field behind the Gilmore School in Ward 4. Last year they had 60 players. In their second year, right now they have 100 players registered, which is wonderful. It's called Boxers Little League. And they were scheduled to begin their league games this evening. And as I drove down here for the meeting and looked at the raindrops, I thought, this may impact them. But I want to wish all of the players, as well as the coaches and the league administrators who worked so hard to get this going, I want to wish them luck and success in this spring and summer season. Mayor Sullivan and I attended their opening day 2 Saturdays ago. I also want to thank Parks Superintendent Tim Carpenter and the Parks Department for their efforts in preparing the field and identifying light and power. This is a city team effort. We want these children to prosper and do well in baseball, and it's a wonderful activity for young children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. If we have no other business, we are adjourned.